No, the thing is that the change in Saudi Arabia is just happening so fast, so rapidly, and which of course kind of confirms the idea that there is something very different about the ruling people right now and what's going on in their minds and what they care about. The crown prince very much took over all decision-making processes and all that, and it's pretty much leading the cultural changes in the country. But the thing is, I mean, just 10 years ago, there was still a mandatory hijab law. It has been abolished, has been lifted. Now there is still kind of a law which is like vaguely, dressing modestly, but maybe wearing an abaya. But it is not really. It is very loosely defined. But there is no longer a Sharia enforcement. Saudi Arabia was one of the two countries that had this massive Sharia regulation and obligation, along with Iran. They abolished it. But you would think, okay, abolishing Sharia, abolishing hijab is one thing, but along with that, then bikinis, allowing parties, then organizing a music festival and inviting the most.
Alcohol now legalized in certain places in Saudi Arabia. So there is the famous little interview that was posted on Memory where he's affirming the Quran, but he's saying he rejects most hadiths and so on, and apparently doesn't think that they should apply legally. A clip on how many Saudis are estimated to be atheists, and 5 to 9% of Saudis people in Saudi Arabia are estimated 5 to 9% are estimated to be closet atheists. 5 to 9%.
There were always rumors and also news of whenever the crown prince travels internationally, goes to Western countries, you can already see him. Often he just takes off his whole thing and dresses like a regular person in the West. But there were also like rumors that he just engages in all kinds of activities, parties, and all kinds of pleasures whenever he's away from there. The thing is, Saudi Arabia wasn't always a restrictive Islamist country. Despite being the home, despite being in charge of the two sacred sites of Islam, until the 70s or so, it wasn't very restrictive. It was in the 70s that this thing happened. The Grand Mosque seizure happened. Saudi Arabia took an extremely sharp turn toward becoming incredibly religious and imposing all kinds of restrictions upon the population. That's where Saudi Arabia suddenly turned hard Islamist. And now it seems like under the current crown prince, things are turning into the opposite direction. And lots of people say this is happening because Saudi Arabia realizes, like everyone else, that Saudi Arabia was nothing. It was nothing. It was a poor, dumb desert until oil made them rich. But oil dependency will, in the future, run out, and it will no longer benefit them. And what will they be left with? Which is why they now have to find a different thing to channel toward, and what they are going for is westernization, opening up the country to tourism and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so they have really upped the income of the pilgrimage. So they've got the oil revenue, and then by getting more and more people to go on big fancy trips to the Hajj, they make a lot of money that way. But and by the way, that was kind of the original purpose of that whole setup. You'll all recall when we've gone in detail through the Quran, Surah 9 verse 28 through verse 33. This whole pilgrimage thing, it's all a money making scheme. Not according to me, according to the Quran and the commentaries. So according to Surah 9, verse 28, Muhammad was declaring that the pagans could no longer take the pilgrimage to Mecca, and Muslims became worried. The new Muslims in Mecca became worried. This is gonna interfere with our trade with these people. It's going to interfere with our money in the city, because we don't have a lot going on in this city. It's kind of a desert crap hole. One of the things we got going through us is we got people coming in to take the pilgrimage here, and you're ruining that. And that's when Muhammad gives the solution to the very next verse. We're going to fight the Jews and Christians till they pay the jizya. So we're going to get paid that way. So you get paid with jizya. But the other way you get paid is if people convert. Then they're paying their zakat, and they're taking the pilgrimage to Mecca. So it's all, you're worried about losing one source of revenue. I'm giving you all these extra sources of revenue, isn't it? Isn't it wonderful? And this is wild. It was just 2018 where women were allowed to start driving. In fact, one of the clips that Black Angel sent me, it was a woman saying, we weren't even allowed to, it's at the Bikini Beach, and she's going, we weren't even allowed to listen to music a few years ago. We weren't allowed to listen to it. And now recently, they weren't even allowed to listen to music. And before 2018, they weren't allowed to drive. This is really, really wild here. As I pointed out, 5 to 9% of Saudis are estimated to be atheist, and that will, here's the comment here, for you atheists who are celebrating, if the trajectory continues, that is correct, Mohammed Hijab, if the trajectory continues, what's this going to be like in another 5 or 10 years? So, like, how did the country change this rap? I mean, that's like unprecedented. I've never seen this much change in a 5-year period. One of the things I thought was awesome about the internet that really was probably the main reason I focused on YouTube early on was I realized in the Muslim world, they've been able to keep their people insulated from criticism for 14 centuries. And all of a sudden, you've got open access to them. And their leaders can no longer keep them insulated, but they still try. Like Pakistan bans videos and things like that. But I mean, if they're just like opening the floodgates all of a sudden, I think I think Islam is in a bit of trouble. I think Islam is in a bit of trouble.
It is a downfall, and I guess there was always talk about the whole revivalism of Islam that took place over the last half century or so, because a lot of the Muslim countries that are nowadays known to be very religious, they were actually very secular at the beginning of the 20th century and throughout. They were following very secular and nationalist ideas that were contrary to this, to Islamic unity and Islamic laws and all of that. There was a revivalist movement where these Salafi groups and others started saying, "We, the Muslim world, we have become terrible. We have become, pathetic. We have lost our faith. It is time to go back to the roots of our religion," and so on. And this is how they slowly took over and turned these countries into more religious things. If the trajectory continues as it is, and Saudi Arabia, along with other countries, after such a short revivalism period, again turns toward secularism and let's go off Islam, then this could mean that whole Islamic revivalist period was just a hiccup or a last-ditch effort by the Islamists or by Islam to stay relevant or stay in charge, and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. Obviously, these countries realize that Islam doesn't work. It doesn't get them anywhere, and they're going a different way now.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's going on. This avalanche of apostasy, you're ending up with all these apostates. You have lots of apostates who just, they leave Islam and then they go about their lives and so on. You end up with there's a tiny percentage that actually become like vocal ex-Muslims trying to expose Islam. And so that's one of the things that has changed. 15 years ago, there were not a lot of people dealing with Islam regularly. Now there are tons. And it's cool.
And that's the beauty of Islam.
And think about this. What happens in a place like Saudi Arabia when apostasy, when it becomes okay, when they realize we can't just keep covering up all of these apostates. We need to make it legal to be an ex-Muslim. We need to make it legal to be an atheist now and all these other things and to criticize Islam. Gosh, Islam would just implode almost instantly if the laws were changed to allow all the ex-Muslims to come out. Because keep in mind, if you're talking about 5 to 9 or 5 to 10% of the population of Saudi Arabia actually being ex-Muslim atheists, but they're not allowed to speak. What happens if all of a sudden they're allowed to speak? A percentage of that 5 to 10% of atheists are actually going to become pretty vocal in criticizing what they've had to keep their mouths shut about for a long time. So that 5 to 10% atheist figure is old. I'm pretty sure it's from 2012. By the way, I'm all in favor of changing Saudi Arabia to Idemir Arabia. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Oh yeah,
and you're right that 5 to on the clip that Black Angel sent me was 5 to 9%, and those estimates are old. So you could, and given the rate at which things are changing, it does not take a long time. Would not be surprising if all of a sudden you see 20% or something like that, or 25%. Pretty crazy. And then how do you switch it back? Yeah, I've broken down multiple times sort of what led up to the Iranian Revolution and the Muslim Brotherhood and all that. And I've pointed out that, so just to recap for anyone who's not familiar with it, pretty quick. After the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, so Islam always had an empire from the time they got one. For many centuries, they always had an empire. They lost their empire when the Ottoman Empire fell, and all of a sudden they no longer have a caliphate anymore. This is like, I mean, to a Muslim, to your average Muslim back then, people can't even absorb how big this was for them, right? We've always had our caliphate, and now we've lost our caliphate. We don't have a caliph. What is going on here? This wasn't supposed to happen. it has collapsed. We've lost. We have been defeated. We lost our empire. And so the reaction was for these countries to say, all right, well, we lost. And, the Western world is much more powerful. So we need to start copying Western nations. And so look at pictures from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran from 60, 70 years ago. They look like Western nations. They all tried to modernize. There's another possible reaction. There's another possible interpretation of the evidence. And the other possible interpretation of the situation is that you weren't being strict enough. You weren't being devout enough. You weren't applying Sharia faithfully. And that's why Allah is punishing you using these Western nations, or he's testing you or something along those lines. And you have the opportunity to really double down on Sharia, and then Allah will bless you. And so that's when you get, the Iranian Revolution, where the fanatical religious leaders take over. That's when you get the Muslim Brotherhood. Eventually, you get groups like ISIS, but they all had the same mentality. The reason we are not dominating the world is because we are not being strict enough. We're not eliminating heresy and hypocrisy. If we just do those things and go full force on Sharia, then Allah is going to bless us. And well, notice, how's that working out for everyone? It's not working out. So the question is, if that failed, what then happens? And according to what AP was just saying, we might be seeing the collapse. We might be seeing them realizing, actually, just going hardcore like Salafi Muslim Brotherhood style Islam, it's not working. We need to go back to modernizing.
It's not working. I find the thing very funny. The abolishing of the caliphate happened under Ataturk. I made a video on that, how this Turk destroyed Islam. But it's very funny because the guy actually, so Ataturk takes over Turkey after the whole, secular revolution, when Western powers defeat the Ottoman Empire and basically scatter it and try to turn it into different countries and one little Turkish country. Ataturk fights against them with under his leadership, defeats them, is heavily against the Ottoman Empire, heavily against Islamic rule. He calls it he calls it an old, outdated, useless system and things like that. Expels the Ottomans from Turkey and has the caliphate now in his hands. And he says, we don't want this. We don't need this. This is ridiculous. This makes us backward and stupid. But what he actually does, Ataturk, is reportedly he offers it to certain people. He says, no Turkish leader should hold this title. Let's give it to somebody else, to some Arabs who will not have any, who will not have any jurisdiction or any power over Turkey. He offers it to several leaders, and they say, no, I am not worthy. We stay loyal to the Ottoman Caliph. And in the end, what Ataturk does is like, well, okay, abolish it. Abolish it. If they're going to do that, let's just abolish it, get rid of it, completely destroy it. And then they officially abolish it, and it's gone. It's gone. Permanently. Wild. It can't be reestablished again because they're simply, it's impossible with this Islamic world to create the unity and establish the caliphate.
Because they're all rallying around different leaders and different dawah guys and different sheikhs and so on, and you can't do it anymore. Wow. So Urban Infidel said they are choosing the cow. And John B pointed out their strip clubs are petting zoos. Pretty rude. All right, we got a bunch of super chats. We'll read those in a minute. Let's go ahead and watch the first one. We have two clips. One is pretty short. That's the one. This is the one that started circulating where a guy, no idea whether we should trust him, but a sheikh is saying that he has inside information that the crown prince is actually hates Islam and is an undercover unbeliever. So let's go ahead and watch this. And then we'll watch Harris Sultan actually goes through it a bit more carefully and adds his own commentary. We'll check that out. But here we go.
أحد ضباط CIA اللي أصبح الآن عضو في الكونغرس تكلم قال قابلت محمد بن سلمان قبل
someone from the CIA stated that he met with MBS about 1.5 years ago.
سنة ونص تقريبا شخصيا بيني وبينه.
Personal meeting with him. He said something of critical importance. Should I read what he's saying out loud for anyone who's listening? What do you think, AP?
I'm always conflicted on that. Sometimes they're like, I'm listening, please read it. And then I read it, and they're like, we can read it.
I'm going to read it out loud for people, because some people actually say they listen to it at work and stuff like this if they're doing a job where they can listen to stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And if you don't like it, you have my full permission to cry me or whatever. The other people would be like actual Arabic speakers who are just trying to listen to this dude.
You can't
هو يقول
He said that the problem does not lie with the extremists. So MBS says the problem does not lie with the extremists. If the trajectory continues, you?
والمشكلة ليست في الجماعات الجهادية.
Nor with the jihadi groups,
المشكلة في
AP,
الإسلام نفسه.
but rather with Islam itself, AP.
وعلينا أن
So the Western government should work together with us.
الحكومات الغربية حتى نساعد في تغيير الإسلام نفسه.
So that we can reform Islam itself. So this guy's saying that he knows a CIA guy who's talking to the Saudi Crown Prince, and the Saudi Crown Prince was telling the CIA agent, we should work together, Western nations. The problem is not extremists. The problem is not the extremists. The problem is Islam itself. So we should all be working together to create a better future here.
Wow. I mean, if he really did say that, that's
And that's what I mean. It's like you'd think, okay, why should I listen to this guy? Why would I be listening to this guy? Any enemy that MBS has, any enemy he has could just go up and say, oh, he's actually a secret. He's working with the CIA. Like, you could do it. But it makes perfect sense of everything the guy's doing since he's been in. It makes perfect sense. You're sitting there wondering, why are they having all these concerts? Why are they obsessed with all these sporting events now? Why are they obsessed with, why are they legalizing alcohol and having bikini beaches? And that kind of fits. In other words, he doesn't sound like someone who's taking Islam very seriously. And then the accusations start coming out. Actually, behind the scenes, he acknowledges it to Western leaders and saying, hey, we need to work together and working towards the future.
The thing is, on the one hand, I want to believe this because it sounds fantastic. It sounds very, very based, as they say, in science. But the other thing is, of course, in the Arab world, there is an insane amount of conspiracy theories, and Arabs, Middle Eastern people are in general not a very good source of information. You can find them say all kinds of ridiculous things and
pretty racist. Go ahead. Are Turkish people racist against Arabs, AP?
Parts of them are, yeah. But
how about you particularly?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Okay, that means yes. Okay, go ahead. Because that's exactly what I would expect a racist to say, right? You're not going to be like, yeah, I'm a racist, right? Racists don't admit it. They're like, no, I don't believe it.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. But you can hear all kinds of ridiculous things like that. Israel actually installs cameras in birds which fly over and land in Muslim countries, through which Israel spies on Muslims and things like that. All kinds of ridiculous things. So what I'm getting at is that in the Muslim world, you better don't believe something that some guy says, no matter who it is. But again, I would like to believe that it's true.
It's a weird situation, and it reminds me of the situation of you can have basically a Muslim who doesn't believe in terrorism or killing apostates or something like that will tell you, and he'll be speaking truthfully. But someone who does believe in terrorism and killing apostates and things can lie and just say he doesn't believe in those things just to make Islam look more peaceful. The point is, someone could be telling you something and it's like, oh, okay, well, he may be telling the truth or he may be lying. I can't tell, because if he believes what he's saying, he's going to say that. And if he doesn't believe what he's saying, he's going to say it. So either way, he's going to say the exact same thing, and I can't tell. And so it's a situation where, okay, this guy may know someone. This guy could know someone who informed him, hey, this Saudi Crown Prince doesn't actually believe in Islam. This could be entirely truthful here. He could have this information. Or even if this guy's making stuff up, the dude could be a closet atheist or something like that. Or this guy could just view him as well, he's too laid back, and so we need someone that's more Sharia compliant, so we need to start accusing him of being a closet atheist who hates Islam. You just can't tell with these guys, because you can never tell when they're telling the truth or not.
Yeah, the Crown Prince is a Jew. He's a Jew.
That should be the title. Is the Saudi Crown Prince a Jew?
No joke. It's like, of course, in the Muslim world, that's one thing to go for. As soon as you suspect that somebody is not going the way you want them to go, you're like, oh, he's a Jew. He's working for Israel.
Yeah.
And actually, with the Crown Prince, this is not something uncommon. You have many people might have seen since October 7th. There were memes, there were pictures spread about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, depicting him as a Jewish guy with a hat and those things. Because Saudi Arabia has been normalizing relations with Israel. And
that's the other component, by the way.
They didn't take strict action against Israel after October 7th. That's why they're like, "Does you see? The Crown Prince is actually a secret Jew. He's working for his own people."
But notice that would actually fit in pretty well with the rest of the trend, right? Yeah. It's like if I see a nation like Saudi Arabia saying, "Hey, time to get along with the Jews," I'm like, "Wait, what? Have you read your books? No, we don't take those seriously." Wait, what?
The Jew.
Very interesting stuff going on here. All right, let's see where this guy goes with this. So MBS made such a statement to that person.
فهو الرجل الآن يصرح لهذا الشخص ما لم يصرحه لغيره.
Which is something he has not said, which is that he finds Islam itself to be problematic.
Nice.
Finds Islam itself to be problematic. So MBS has dedicated his life to change Islam. He, again, whether this guy knows what he's talking about or is making stuff up, the behavior that we're seeing definitely fits the idea that he does not take Islam very seriously. And that's kind of like that. That's putting it mildly. So he's either an unbeliever or he's just not taking it seriously. Something's going on.
من أجل أن يغير الدين والعياذ بالله حتى
In order to strip Muslims of their religion.
يخلص المسلمين من الاعتداد بدينهم من الثقة
to undermine their confidence in their faith.
من التمسك بهذا المنهج وشايف حاله أقول لكم
This individual is not in his right mind. Oh. Wait, what?
Where is this guy from?
I don't know. It's crazy, but it's like he's saying all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, cool. Wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. And all of a sudden, this individual's not in his right mind, dude. Everything you just said suggests that this guy's a genius, and you're saying that he's not in his right mind.
I wonder who this guy is. I mean, he's certainly not from Saudi Arabia, because you can't. If you were from Saudi Arabia and you said something like this, you would be done for. So.
ليس طبيعيا يعني رجل يعني اكتنفه جنون.
He's a megalomaniac and thinks he can achieve what? Something. Oh, did you hear that? Something which those before him could not do. No one has ever contemplated changing Islam. What planet does this dude live on? You can corrupt people's morals. That's true. Or oppress them, or imprison them, or kill the scholars, or banish them. However, it's not. Is this guy joking? Like what?
They will cite the Quran verse and say, Allah says, Allah will complete his light, although the disbelievers dislike it. That's what Muslims actually believe. So they actually believe that nobody has ever tried, or people tried, but they've never achieved to even change a little bit of Islam, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like, has this guy not been paying attention to the trajectory?
No, apparently not.
Dude, you're living in the middle of it right now. I don't know what this guy's thinking. It's not realistic to change Islam itself. It's not doable, regardless of how hard you try, to change Islam itself. The Quran says so. Past 1,400 years, others before you have tried. Yeah, guy doesn't get it. One, all kinds of changes took place in Islam over the past 1,400 years. But guess what? Anything that dies out, you could say for a long time, oh, but it's lasted so long, right? And then it dies out. Lots of again, Greek religion, Roman religion, those things died out. They didn't last, but they lasted a long time. But then they didn't anymore. And so let's get used to the idea.
What an atheist would say.
But an atheist would say a bunch of other dumb stuff to go along with it. And they start talking about zaboobas.
ولم يستطيعوا فهذا الذي نقله يدل دلالة الأولى
MBS is a criminal. Says first, MBS is a criminal.
الأولى أن محمد بن سلمان مجرم يعادي الإسلام نفسه.
That harbors hostility towards Islam itself. Well, in that sense, we're friends, because I harbor hostility towards Islam. But I'm open with it. But if I were the crown prince of Saudi Arabia and an atheist, I wouldn't be open with it. I'd just destroy it from within.
Yeah.
Not the claims of extremism and fundamentalism.
وأنه قد حمل هذا الموضوع فعلا كرسالة وكمشروع وكقضية له يتبناها. والموضوع الثاني.
Again, notice how this fits. He's saying this guy actually hates Islam, and he's making it his life project to destroy Islam from within. That fits perfectly with the observation. I can't say that's the reason. It could be other things. He could really believe in. He could really believe in Islam and just say, we got to modernize. We can't just. Someone's got to do it at some point. Could be something like that, but I don't know. It seems to fit better if he's just a guy who doesn't take Islam seriously, and can be a combination. Could be a combination of the two. Like one, we need to modernize, and two, I don't really believe in Islam anyway.
The funny thing is the word that he just used to describe MBS, mujrim. It does mean criminal, but it's like it doesn't really like the word criminal in English doesn't quite cover the meaning of what that actually is. Like it's not like a criminal before the law. It is more like somebody who is I don't know, somebody who's a sinner or criminal, an offender of some sort. I don't know. You can't even really translate it, but it has much harsher implications actually.
See, Arabic is such a perfect language.
Yeah. Yes.
Can't be translated. Actually, this is the end. Here's the end. Let's see. Proves that MBS is a foolish person. Wait, this is what I mean, right? This proves that he's a foolish person. Wait, proves the opposite of that. How are you getting that? All I heard from this guy is, look, MBS said this, and he's completely right, and he said that, and it's completely right, and he's doing this, and it's completely right, and everything he's doing is completely right. You see? He's not a smart person. Wait, what?
Look, MBS is a genius.
He thinks that he can achieve something unrealistic and unachievable. So this guy's whole thing, look, he's saying, hey, look at everything MBS is doing. It's all right on the money, but this guy thinks he can change Islam. It's unrealistic and unachievable, so he's crazy.